February 25, 1968, Pacific Ocean, 1,160 miles northwest of Hawaii. A Soviet Golf II class ballistic missile submarine, K-129, is on patrol. It carries 98 crew members, 3 nuclear-tipped R-21 missiles, and a safe full of Soviet Navy code books. It's one of the most sensitive vessels in the Soviet fleet. At approximately 8:40 p.m. local time, something goes catastrophically wrong. The submarine sinks. All 98 crew members die. The submarine comes to rest on the ocean floor, 16,000 feet down, 3 miles below the surface. The Soviet Navy launches a massive search operation. They deploy ships, submarines, and aircraft. They search for 2 months. They never find it, but the United States does. The U.S. Navy's SOSUS network, a chain of underwater listening posts designed to track Soviet submarines, detected an explosion at the exact moment K-129 sank. The Navy knows where it is, down to a few square miles, and the CIA decides to do something impossible. They're going to steal it, not a piece of it, not a fragment, the entire submarine. A 2,000-ton, 300-foot-long ballistic missile submarine, from 16,000 feet down, in international waters, in secret, while Soviet ships watch. It's the most audacious covert operation of the Cold War. It requires building the largest ship ever constructed for a covert mission. It requires inventing technology that doesn't exist. It requires convincing the world that billionaire Howard Hughes is mining the ocean floor for manganese nodules. And it almost works. This is Project Azorian, the story of how the CIA tried to steal a Soviet submarine from 3 miles down. To understand Project Azorian, you need to understand what happened to K-129. K-129 was a Golf II class ballistic missile submarine. It was old. It had been commissioned in 1960. By 1968, it was 8 years old, which in submarine terms is middle-aged. It was diesel-electric, not nuclear. That meant it had to surface regularly to run its diesel engines and recharge its batteries. It carried 3 R-21 ballistic missiles. Each missile had a range of 900 miles and carried a 1-megaton nuclear warhead. That's 70 times more powerful than the bomb that destroyed Hiroshima. K-129's mission was to patrol the Pacific, stay hidden, and be ready to launch its missiles at American cities if war broke out. On February 24, 1968, K-129 left its base at Rybakhye on the Kamchatka Peninsula in eastern Russia. It was commanded by Captain First Rank Vladimir Kobzar. He was an experienced officer. This was a routine patrol. K-129 was supposed to stay at sea for 70 days, then return home. But something went wrong. On the night of February 25th at approximately 8:40 p.m. local time, K-129 sank. We still don't know exactly why. The Soviet Navy conducted an investigation, but the findings remain classified. Western intelligence has several theories. Theory 1, a collision. K-129 may have collided with the USS Swordfish, an American attack submarine that was shadowing it. The Swordfish returned to port shortly after K-129 sank with unexplained damage to its sail. The U.S. Navy denies any collision, but the timing is suspicious. Theory 2, a battery explosion. Diesel-electric submarines have massive battery banks. If seawater leaks into the battery compartment, it can cause a hydrogen explosion. This has happened before. Soviet submarines were notorious for poor maintenance. Theory 3, a missile accident. One of the R-21 missiles may have malfunctioned and exploded in its tube. This would have flooded the submarine instantly. Theory 4, crew error. The submarine may have surfaced to recharge its batteries and failed to properly seal a hatch before diving again. Water would have flooded in, and the submarine would have sunk before the crew could react. We may never know the truth. What we do know is that at 8:40 p.m. on February 25, 1968, K-129 sank. It came to rest on the ocean floor at a depth of 16,000 feet. All 98 crew members died. The Soviet Navy didn't know where it was. K-129 had missed a scheduled radio check-in. That was the first sign something was wrong. The Soviets launched a search operation. They deployed 60 ships and 12 submarines. They searched for 2 months. They covered thousands of square miles of ocean. They never found it, but the United States did. Here's how. The U.S. Navy operates a system called SOSUS, Sound Surveillance System. It's a network of underwater listening posts, hydrophones, placed on the ocean floor at strategic locations around the world. The hydrophones are connected by cables to shore stations where Navy technicians monitor them 24 hours a day. SOSUS was designed to detect Soviet submarines. Submarines are loud. They make noise. Propellers, engines, pumps, crew movement. All of that creates sound, and sound travels incredibly well underwater. A submarine 1,000 miles away can be heard by a SOSUS hydrophone. On the night of February 25, 1968, a SOSUS station in the Pacific detected an unusual sound. It was a low-frequency thump, not a propeller, not an engine, an explosion, or an implosion. The sound of a submarine hull collapsing under pressure. The Navy technicians triangulated the sound. They used data from multiple SOSUS stations to pinpoint the location. They calculated that the sound came from a specific area of the Pacific, about 1,560 miles northwest of Hawaii. The Navy reported this to the CIA, and the CIA realized what they had: a Soviet ballistic missile submarine on the ocean floor in international waters with nuclear missiles, code books, and encryption equipment. It was an intelligence goldmine. But there was a problem. The submarine was 16,000 feet down, 3 miles. At that depth, the water pressure is 7,000 pounds per square inch. That's 500 times the pressure at sea level. It's enough to crush a car into a ball the size of a basketball. No human could go down there. No submarine could reach it. The deepest diving submarine in the U.S. Navy at the time, the bathyscaphe Trieste, could reach 20,000 feet, but it couldn't carry anything. It was a research vessel, not a salvage ship. So the CIA had a choice: leave the submarine on the ocean floor, or figure out a way to bring it up. They chose to bring it up, and that's when Project Azorian began. In 1969, the CIA assembled a team to figure out how to raise K-129 from the ocean floor. The team included engineers from the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology, naval architects, deep-sea salvage experts, and contractors from Global Marine, a company that specialized in offshore drilling. They were given an impossible mandate: design a system to lift a 2,000-ton submarine from 16,000 feet down, in secret, without the Soviets finding out. The first problem was simple physics. At 16,000 feet, the water pressure is immense. Any cable strong enough to lift 2,000 tons would have to be incredibly thick and incredibly heavy. The weight of the cable itself would be enormous. You'd need a ship with a crane powerful enough to lift not just the submarine, but the cable too. The engineers did the math. They calculated that a steel cable capable of lifting K-129 would weigh more than the submarine itself. It was impractical. So they came up with a different approach. Instead of a cable, they would use a pipe string, a series of connected steel pipes, like the kind used in deep-sea oil drilling. The pipes would be hollow, which made them lighter than a solid cable, and they would be strong enough to handle the load. At the bottom of the pipe string, they would attach a capture vehicle, a giant claw designed to grab the submarine and hold it while it was lifted. The claw would have hydraulic arms that could close around the submarine's hull. Once the submarine was secure, the ship would reel in the pipe string, lifting the submarine to the surface. It was an elegant solution, but it required building equipment that had never existed before. The capture vehicle alone was a marvel of engineering. It was 180 feet long, 35 feet wide, and weighed 2,000 tons. It had 8 hydraulic arms, each strong enough to lift 500 tons. The arms were designed to close around the submarine like fingers grasping a pencil. Once closed, the arms would lock in place, and the submarine would be secure. But the capture vehicle was only part of the system. They also needed a ship large enough to carry the pipe string, the capture vehicle, and all the support equipment. A ship with a crane powerful enough to lower and raise 4,000 tons of equipment. A ship that could operate in the open ocean, in rough seas, for weeks at a time. And it had to look like it was doing something else, because the Soviets would be watching. So the CIA came up with a cover story. They would build the ship under the guise of a deep-sea mining operation. The ship would be designed to mine manganese nodules from the ocean floor. Manganese nodules are potato-sized rocks that form on the ocean floor. They contain valuable minerals like manganese, nickel, and copper. In the 1970s, there was a lot of interest in deep-sea mining. Several companies were exploring the idea. The CIA decided to use that as cover. They would build a mining ship. They would tell the world it was mining manganese nodules, and they would use it to steal a Soviet submarine. But they needed a public face for the operation. Someone credible, someone with enough money and eccentricity that building a deep-sea mining ship wouldn't seem suspicious. They chose Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes was a billionaire. An aviator, a film producer, an engineer, and a recluse. By the 1970s, Hughes was living in a penthouse in Las Vegas, rarely seen in public. He was eccentric, paranoid, and obsessed with secrecy. He was perfect. The CIA approached Hughes through his company, Hughes Tool Company. They explained the operation. They asked if Hughes would allow his name to be used as cover. Hughes agreed. He didn't have to do anything. He just had to let the CIA use his name. And so, in 1970, the CIA created a front company called Summa Corporation. Summa Corporation announced that it was building a deep-sea mining ship called the Hughes Glomar Explorer. The ship would be designed to mine manganese nodules from the Pacific Ocean floor. It would be the largest ship ever built for deep-sea mining. The announcement made headlines. Deep-sea mining was a hot topic. Environmental groups were concerned. Mining companies were excited. The media covered it extensively, and the Soviets believed it. Construction of the Hughes Glomar Explorer began in 1971 at the Sun Shipbuilding Yard in Philadelphia. The ship was massive, 619 feet long, 115 feet wide. It displaced 63,000 tons. It had a derrick in the center, 250 feet tall, that could lift 16,000 tons. It had a moon pool, a large opening in the center of the ship that extended from the deck down to the bottom of the hull. The pipe string and capture vehicle would be lowered through the moon pool. The ship cost $350 million to build, in 1971 dollars. That's about $2.5 billion today. It was the most expensive covert operation in CIA history, and it took 3 years to build. While the ship was being built, the CIA sent a deep-sea submersible, the Halibut, to photograph K-129. The Halibut was a modified nuclear submarine equipped with cameras and sonar. In 1970, the Halibut located K-129 and took thousands of photographs. The photos showed that the submarine was largely intact. The bow section was damaged, but the missile compartment and the conning tower were in good condition. The CIA studied the photos. They refined the design of the capture vehicle. They planned the mission down to the smallest detail. By 1974, everything was ready. The Hughes Glomar Explorer was complete. The capture vehicle was built. The crew was trained. The mission was a go. But there was one more problem. The Soviets were watching. In June 1974, the Hughes Glomar explorer left Long Beach, California, and sailed for the recovery site in the Pacific. The ship's crew consisted of 180 people. Most of them were civilian contractors from Global Marine. They were told they were on a deep-sea mining mission. Only a handful of people on board knew the truth. The CIA had compartmentalized the operation. The crew operating the capture vehicle knew they were recovering a submarine. The crew operating the derrick thought they were mining manganese nodules. The cook thought he was on a research vessel. It was a master class in operational security. The ship arrived at the recovery site on July 4, 1974, Independence Day. The location was 1,560 miles northwest of Hawaii, in international waters. The ocean floor was 16,000 feet down, and there were Soviet ships nearby. The Soviets had been monitoring the Hughes Glomar explorer since it left port. They knew it was in the area. They sent a tugboat and a salvage ship to observe. The Soviet ships stayed about a mile away, watching through binoculars. The CIA had anticipated this. The cover story was designed to hold up under observation. The Hughes Glomar explorer would lower its pipe string and capture vehicle just like a mining ship would. The Soviets would see a mining operation. They wouldn't see a submarine recovery. On July 5th, the mission began. The crew assembled the pipe string. Each section of pipe was 60 feet long and weighed several tons. The sections were connected end to end, forming a continuous pipe that extended from the ship down to the ocean floor. It took 2 days to assemble the full pipe string. When it was complete, it was over 16,000 feet long, 3 miles. At the bottom of the pipe string, the crew attached the capture vehicle, the giant Claw. It weighed 2,000 tons. Lowering it through the moon pool was a delicate operation. The ship had to remain perfectly stable. Any movement, any wave, could cause the pipe string to sway and snap. The crew lowered the capture vehicle slowly, 1 foot per second. It took 9 hours to reach the ocean floor. When the capture vehicle touched down, the crew used sonar and cameras to position it over K-129. The submarine was lying on its side, partially buried in sediment. The capture vehicle's hydraulic arms extended. They reached out, grasping the submarine's hull, and then they closed. The arms locked around the submarine. The capture vehicle had it. The crew began the lift. The derrick reeled in the pipe string 1 foot at a time. The submarine rose off the ocean floor. The lift was slow, 1 foot per second. At that rate, it would take 9 hours to bring the submarine to the surface. But then disaster struck. At about 5,000 feet below the surface, the pipe string broke. The submarine was too heavy, or the pipe string was damaged, or the stress was too much. We still don't know exactly what happened, but a section of the pipe string snapped. The submarine fell back toward the ocean floor. The capture vehicle's arms held. But the submarine broke apart. The bow section, the heaviest part, tore away and fell. It tumbled back down to the ocean floor, 11,000 feet below. The crew managed to hold on to the rest. The conning tower, part of the missile compartment, and the aft section. About 1/3 of the submarine. They continued the lift. 9 hours later, they brought it to the surface. The Hughes Glomar explorer had a massive hangar inside the ship, below the moon pool. The submarine section was lowered into the hangar. The doors closed. The crew sealed the hangar. And then they began the examination. What they found was both a success and a disappointment. The good news: the section they recovered contained the bodies of 6 Soviet sailors. The CIA gave them a proper burial at sea, filmed the ceremony, and later provided the footage to the Soviet government as a gesture of goodwill. The section also contained code books, encryption equipment, and documentation. The CIA was able to learn about Soviet submarine communication protocols, navigation systems, and operational procedures. It was valuable intelligence. The bad news: the nuclear missiles were in the bow section, the section that broke away and fell back to the ocean floor. The CIA didn't recover the missiles. They didn't recover the nuclear warheads, and they didn't recover the most sensitive cryptographic equipment, which was also in the bow. Project Azorian was a partial success. The CIA recovered part of the submarine, but they didn't get everything they wanted, and then the operation was exposed. In February 1975, 6 months after the mission, investigative journalist Jack Anderson broke the story. Anderson was a syndicated columnist known for exposing government secrets. He had sources inside the CIA. One of them leaked details of Project Azorian. Anderson wrote a column titled CIA's $350 million submarine snatch. He described the Hughes Glomar Explorer, the capture vehicle, and the mission to recover K-129. The story went national. The New York Times, the Washington Post, and every major news outlet picked it up. The CIA's most expensive covert operation was now public knowledge. The CIA was furious. They tried to convince news outlets not to publish the story. CIA Director William Colby personally called editors and asked them to hold off, arguing that publishing would damage national security and endanger ongoing operations. Some outlets complied, others didn't. The Soviets were also furious. They issued a formal protest. They accused the United States of violating international law. They demanded the return of the submarine section and the bodies of the sailors. The CIA refused. They argued that the submarine was in international waters and that salvage law applied. If you find something on the ocean floor in international waters, you can keep it. The Soviets didn't push the issue. They were embarrassed. K-129 had been lost for 7 years, and they hadn't been able to find it. The Americans had found it, photographed it, and stolen part of it. It was a humiliation, but the exposure of Project Azorian had consequences. The CIA had planned a second mission. They wanted to go back and recover the bow section, the part with the missiles and the most sensitive equipment. The Hughes Glomar Explorer was still operational. The capture vehicle could be rebuilt. The mission was feasible. But once the story broke, the second mission was canceled. It was too risky. The Soviets would be watching. The element of surprise was gone. Project Azorian ended. The Hughes Glomar Explorer was mothballed. The ship sat in port for years. Eventually, it was sold and converted into a deep-sea drilling ship. It's still in operation today, drilling for oil in the Gulf of Mexico. The capture vehicle was scrapped. The CIA destroyed all the plans and documentation. For decades, the details of Project Azorian remained classified. But in 2010, the CIA declassified thousands of pages of documents related to the operation. We now know most of the story. We know how the mission was planned. We know what was recovered. We know what was lost. And we know that Project Azorian, despite its partial failure, was one of the most audacious engineering feats of the Cold War. Project Azorian left 2 lasting legacies. One is engineering, the other is legal. Let's start with engineering. The Hughes Glomar Explorer and the capture vehicle represented a quantum leap in deep-sea technology. Before Project Azorian, no one had successfully lifted a large object from 16,000 feet. The technology didn't exist. The CIA had to invent it. The pipe string system, the hydraulic capture vehicle, the dynamic positioning system that kept the ship stable in rough seas. All of these technologies were developed for Project Azorian, and all of them found applications in other industries. Deep-sea oil drilling, for example. The technology used to drill for oil in the Gulf of Mexico in water depths of 10,000 feet or more is directly descended from Project Azorian. The pipe string system, the dynamic positioning, the moon pool design, all of it came from the Hughes Glomar Explorer. Underwater salvage operations also benefited. When Air France Flight 447 crashed into the Atlantic Ocean in 2009, killing 228 people, the wreckage was found at a depth of 13,000 feet. Salvage teams used technology derived from Project Azorian to recover the black boxes and wreckage. The same is true for the search for Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. Project Azorian proved that deep-sea recovery was possible, and it gave the world the tools to do it. The second legacy is legal, and it's called the Glomar Response. After Jack Anderson broke the story, journalists filed Freedom of Information Act requests, asking the CIA to release documents about Project Azorian. The CIA didn't want to confirm or deny the operation's existence. If they confirmed it, they'd have to release documents. If they denied it, they'd be lying. So the CIA came up with a new response. They said, "We can neither confirm nor deny the existence of the information requested." It became known as the Glomar Response. And it's now a standard legal term. Government agencies use it all the time when they don't want to confirm or deny something. If you file a FOIA request about a classified program and the government responds with, "We can neither confirm nor deny," that's a Glomar response. It's named after the Hughes Glomar Explorer. It's one of the strangest legacies of a covert operation. A legal phrase used in courtrooms and FOIA requests, named after a ship that stole a Soviet submarine. But the real legacy of Project Azorian is what it says about the Cold War. The Cold War was fought in the shadows. It was fought with spies, with technology, with covert operations that the public never knew about. Project Azorian is one of the most dramatic examples. The CIA spent $350 million, built the largest covert ship in history, invented new technology, and pulled off one of the most audacious heists ever attempted. And they did it in secret. For years, no one knew. The Soviets didn't know. The American public didn't know. Even most of the crew on the Hughes Glomar Explorer didn't know. It's a reminder that the Cold War wasn't just about missiles and bombers and nuclear brinkmanship. It was also about intelligence, about knowing what the other side had, about stealing secrets, and sometimes about stealing submarines. Project Azorian didn't recover everything the CIA wanted. The nuclear missiles stayed on the ocean floor. The most sensitive cryptographic equipment was lost, but the operation was still a success. The CIA proved it could be done. They recovered part of a Soviet submarine from 3 miles down. They learned valuable intelligence, and they kept it secret for years. The Hughes Glomar Explorer is still out there drilling for oil. The capture vehicle is gone. The submarine section the CIA recovered was studied, then disposed of. K-129's bow section is still on the ocean floor, 16,000 feet down, where it will stay forever. But the story of Project Azorian endures. It's a story of ambition, of engineering brilliance, of Cold War espionage at its most audacious. The CIA stole a Soviet submarine from 3 miles down, and for a few years no one knew.